movie scenes you thought were CGI but are actually practical effects. In this scene from the first Spider-Man movie where Peter Parker acquires his spidey senses, Peter saves Mary Jane from falling when she slips on a spilled drink, and also catches her lunch tray with all its contents. This whole sequence was real and no CGI was used in the making. It took Tobey Maguire 16 hours and 156 takes to get this shot. Weightlessness is often shot using CGI in space movies, but director Ryan Howard wanted to keep it real in Apollo 13. He used a KC-135 Stratotanker for achieving zero gravity. A single flight provided the film crew with just 20 seconds of weightlessness, and it took the film crew 6 months to get all the zero gravity shots. Now we all know Marvel is known for their extensive use of CGI, but the ending skydiving scene from Iron Man 3 was shot without CGI. The production recruited the Red Bull skydiving team to act out all the roles in the scene, and filming the sequence took almost 40 jumps in a span of 6 days. Behind the scenes of Marvel actors' last day on set. On the last day of filming for Avengers Endgame, when they were going to film Tony Stark's funeral, Tom Holland, who everyone knows is a one-man spoiler factory, was told he was going to be attending Tony and Pepper's wedding, and not Tony's funeral, because apparently the crew were so worried about Tom spoiling the ending. But here's where it gets really funny. According to Zendaya and Jacob Batalon, who play MJ and Ned, Tom revealed Tony Stark's fate to them before they got to see the film like everyone else, and spoiled it for them anyways. The best new features coming to iPhones and iOS 16. Now for up to 15 minutes after you first send an iMessage, you can edit it and it'll revise to whoever you sent it to. Or you can just unsend the message altogether, and you have the ability to mark a message that you've already read as unread. You can now copy text from your videos and not just from your photos anymore. And with a feature called Visual Lookup, you can long press and lift any object out of a photo and drop them into whatever you want, and it does a surprisingly good job for a 1-second background delete. With a feature called Desk View, it uses your phone's ultra-wide camera when it's mounted on top of your laptop or monitor to give you this awesome top-down view of whatever's on your desk in front of you, and it works surprisingly well. You can customize lock screens with different fonts and colors. You can add widgets above and below the clock, and with a lock screen feature called Live Activities, you can keep tabs on things like live sports scores or the status of an Uber ride. Incredible things people found hidden in their homes, Part 2. 3 days before Carl Sabatino's aunt passed away, she told him to check under her sewing machine. When he did, he found a painting. At first, he didn't think much of it until he noticed the signature on the upper left corner. The signature read, Picasso. Carl says his uncle bought the painting for $30 from a street vendor in London during World War II. Carl took it to an expert who discovered a partial right thumbprint embedded in the paint, which could only have been left by Picasso himself. And today, the work of art is valued at $25 million to $35 million. Improvised scenes Tom Holland came up with on the spot, Part 2. In Spider-Man Far From Home, when the first Elemental shows up, we see Peter repeatedly bang his head against a giant bell in a tower. This super funny scene all comes from Tom and his brother Harry. The brothers came up with the sequence, shot it on their phone, and then showed it to director John Watts, who liked it enough to include it in the film. Marvel fan theories that actually came true, Part 5. In Avengers Age of Ultron, the vision that Scarlet Witch induced using her powers on Thor showed Heimdall telling the god of thunder that he'd lead Asgard into hell. This led fans to theorize that Asgard really would fall in the MCU and that it would literally be Thor's doing. That turned out to be true, as Asgard's destruction came in Thor Ragnarok, when Thor himself triggered the apocalyptic event in order to defeat Hela and save the remaining Asgardian civilians from her wrath. Speaking of Thor, you can now play as him in this mythological turn-based RPG game named Dislight, but not only as him, but as gods from 4 real-world ancient mythologies, such as Greek, Egyptian, Chinese, and Norse myth. You can use the power of the gods to defeat epic bosses and monsters that are hell-bent on causing destruction just like Hela was. Click here on my profile to check it out. Maybe the reason dragons show up so often in almost every ancient culture is because they actually did exist. Let me explain. Depictions of humans fighting dragons appear around the same time period in places that are so far apart, like China, Africa, Mexico, and many more. If they did exist, maybe the reason we haven't found any fossils of them is because large birds had a hard time being fossilized because their bones were so hollow. It could be the same for dragons. And maybe they didn't literally breathe flames, but instead they were acid spitters. Having an acidic stomach would produce a lot of hydrogen. Hydrogen is flammable, and with a mechanism to produce a spark like an eel, this could turn them into an effective fire breather. Whether dragons are real or not doesn't change the fact that in King of Avalon, you can raise and use dragons to rule your own kingdom. They now have a collab with Orlando Bloom that lets you use his character Orlando the Night Shard for free. And using him along with dragons in the new tower defense mode can lead to an easy win over other players and let you conquer other kingdoms. Click here on my profile if you want to try it. Eddie Munson is coming back in season 5 of Stranger Things. In the last episode of season 4, we see Eddie get bit and killed by Demobats, but that might not be the last time we see him. Here's why. In Dungeons & Dragons, which heavily inspires the show, Vecna has a trusted soldier / helper named Cass, who becomes a vampire by sacrificing himself to Vecna, and after years of imprisonment, he betrays and kills him. Eddie technically sacrificed himself to Vecna since everything in the Upside Down, including the Demobats, are Vecna. And to become a vampire, you have to be bit and killed by a bat like Eddie was. And since Eddie's body was left in the Upside Down, Vecna could revive him just like Eleven revived Max. Some more evidence of this theory is this shot of Eddie and Cass look very similar. The song Eddie plays to distract the Demobats is Master of Puppets, which alludes to Eddie going under Vecna's control, kind of like a puppet. Eddie also has bat tattoos, a puppeteer tattoo, and a spider tattoo. A girl got expelled from school for posting this exact picture, but you will seriously not believe the reason why. It was the night of Kayla's 15th birthday when her mom snapped this photo of her at a restaurant in California. Her mom instantly shared it to Facebook and they thought nothing of it. That is until a few days later when Kayla received a furious letter from her school's principal. She was permanently expelled from school, but the reason why will shock you. So Kayla's school was actually a very religious Christian academy named Whitefield Academy. They didn't like that she was wearing a rainbow sweater in front of a rainbow cake, implying that she was part of the LGBTQ community. According to the principal of the school, this goes against their beliefs. This 29-year-old man married a 4-year-old girl, but the reason why will make you cry. Little Abby was diagnosed with cancer at just 2 years old and had spent her whole life in and out of the hospital. She was sad because she just wanted to be a normal girl, but that's when she met her nurse, Matt Hickling. Matt checked up on Abby every single day, but in his heart he felt like she didn't have much time left. So Matt made it his mission to make sure that Abby felt loved and appreciated before she passed away. Abby loved him so much that she actually told her mom that she wanted to marry him one day. However, only a few days later, Matt received a phone call from Abby's mom. Her mom asked him if Matt and Abby could get married, and no, I don't mean legally. A few days later, they had the cutest little wedding at the hospital. Even though it wasn't real, Abby will remember this for the rest of her life. 15 months after her wedding, Abby completed her chemotherapy treatments and is now cancer-free. The infection in The Last of Us game and show is actually based on this very real parasitic fungus that turns certain insects into zombies. And how similar the fungus is in real life to the infection in The Last of Us will freak you out. The creators of the game and the new show were inspired by zombie carpenter ants specifically. The zombies in The Last of Us go through 4 stages of infection which have parallels in nature, and here they are. In the first stage, the infected humans begin to twitch, get hyper, move at high speeds, and eventually lose the ability to speak, and this all happens in ants as well. In stage 2, the zombies have obvious fungal growth that transforms its host's physical shape and gives it a desire to seek out new hosts, which also happens in ants. In stage 3, the zombies rely on echolocation after losing their sight. In real life, zombie ants also become impaired because they start climbing towards light so that they can prepare for stage 4. In stage 4, the zombies become slow-moving bloaters that can excrete spores, which also happens in ants. This school doesn't have any homework, tests, or any classes. At the Agora school in the Netherlands, life is super easy. For starters, everyone gets to customize their own desk, and these guys used a car. At Agora, students are allowed to use their phones and laptops whenever they want. A regular day at Agora goes something like this. First, students start brainstorming with their friends to find out what they should do that day. After that, it's project time, which can be in any of their major facilities, including woodshop. Then after lunch, there's this period called quiet time, where students are encouraged to meditate and sleep in these little pods. But I have to say the absolute best part of this school is the students get to decide when they start and when they go home. This lifeguard accidentally saved someone and actually got in trouble for it. Jessie was a summer lifeguard at her community pool where things were usually pretty slow, but Jessie did her job well. One day she was sitting in the lifeguard chair and suddenly she noticed something odd. It wasn't anything big, just some bubbles from the bottom of the pool, but it was enough to make her worried. She looked a little closer and saw that there was someone at the bottom of the pool, so Jessie knew she had to help. She blew the whistle and dove in. Just like she thought, there was a kid at the bottom of the pool. She tried to bring him up, but he was kicking and yelling. It turns out the kid was actually diving for some rings and wasn't actually drowning. Jessie got lectured by her manager, but she didn't get fired. fired. She was just trying to do the right thing, so I'm not even sure why she got a lecture from her manager, but let me know what you think. This man was married to his wife for 30 years until a car accident reveals who she really is. Tyler and Hannah met in their first year of high school and pretty much fell in love right away. They were two high school sweethearts who got married the day after they graduated. 30 years passed and they were still together, but Tyler noticed there was something not right with Hannah. You see, every Tuesday night at midnight since the day they got married, Hannah would leave the house and not come back till morning. On top of that, Hannah would go through insane mood swings and forget what they did the day before. Tyler would wake up in a cold sweat every night just thinking about it, and he needed to know the truth. Little did he know he was about to when the police showed up at his door one Tuesday. They told Tyler that Hannah had been involved in a serious car accident. He rushed into the hospital and into Hannah's room, but you won't believe who was in the bed. It was Hannah's twin sister. They had been swapping places every Tuesday since the day of the wedding. This woman managed to escape from North Korea 2 times. Eunsun Kim and her mother first tried escaping North Korea for the very first time when she was only 11 years old. They chose to flee into China from the northern border in North Korea. They fled over a frozen river because they made their escape in the winter, but their escape into China didn't last very long. Like many women who tried to escape North Korea, they were sold into human trafficking, and then they were sold back to North Korea by the farmer who bought them, and they were considered traitors by North Korea when they returned. They had to live on the streets as beggars after a number of punishments, and now that they had nothing to lose, the two of them planned another escape. After a couple of months, Eunsun Kim and her mother planned to flee to China again, but this time live under the radar in Shanghai for 4 years. Now they live in South Korea after being repatriated there. Eunsun Kim actually wrote this book about her experience in North Korea and her escape. The real reason why the McDonald's ice cream machines are always broken is not because the employees are lazy and do not bother cleaning the machines. It is way deeper and more corrupt than that. McDonald's requires franchise owners to use Taylor ice cream machines. With a variety of buttons and no text explaining their purpose, Taylor machines feature a confusing interface. Moreover, the machines have been reported to show unclear error signals, giving no clues about the actual error. As a consequence, these machines break down frequently. However, the catch is, according to their contract, franchise owners are only allowed to call Taylor technicians for fixing a Taylor ice cream machine. A leaked invoice showed that Taylor technicians charged $144 for just 30 minutes and up to $400 for every additional 15 minutes of repairing. Moreover, 25% of Taylor's revenue is generated from repair services. To conclude, Taylor intentionally keeps its ice cream machines prone to breakdowns, thus profiting from the inevitable repairs. This couple sold their company for $850 million and bought it back just 5 years later for $1 million. In 2005, Michael and Sochi Birch launched Bebo. It was an early social media site that competed aggressively with Facebook and MySpace. It was able to amass 45 million users, which caught the attention of struggling giant AOL. AOL dropped $850 million to buy Bebo in an attempt to stay relevant. However, it quickly became clear that Bebo would not be able to compete with upstarts like Facebook and Twitter. Just 2 years after being valued at nearly $1 billion, AOL sold Bebo for a price of $10 million. When the company that bought Bebo filed for bankruptcy a few years later, the founders swooped back in and bought the company for just $1 million. They proceeded to turn Bebo into a live streaming website and sold it to Twitch in 2019 for $25 million. Today we're going to be talking about how The Wizard of Oz is actually considered a cursed movie. Judy, who was only 17, was drugged and molested during the filming of the movie. There has been countless amounts of reports that she was molested and sexually harassed by both the Munchkin actors and studio executives. Next, the actress that plays the Wicked Witch got horrifically burned during filming. During the scene where the Wicked Witch escapes Munchkin Land in a plume of smoke, the pyrotechnics team accidentally set off the explosion a little too early. This led to the actress's broom, hair, and makeup to catch on fire. Medics had to use alcohol to remove her toxic makeup, which was extremely painful due to her burns. Genius people who beat the system. Up until 2019, women were not allowed to attend soccer matches in Iran. But in 2018, these 5 girls successfully snuck into a championship soccer game disguised as men. Next, some schools don't allow guys and girls to be in their dorm rooms together, but this couple came up with a very creative solution to still hang out and watch movies together. Next, a mayor in Brazil prohibited bar owners from setting tables on the sidewalk, so the bar owners came up with an amazing solution that honestly looks pretty dangerous but also fun. Lastly, this man from Turkey was banned from his favorite soccer team stadium for a year, but he wasn't going to let that stop him from missing an important game. So he rented a crane and raised himself high enough so he could see the game, and he even led the crowd in a chant. Every time Tom Holland predicted his own future.
what kind of superhero would I want to play? Maybe Spider-Man in like 10 years' time.
If you could be in a movie with any 3 actors, alive or dead, who would you pick? Jake Gyllenhaal.
My favourite video game is this little game called Uncharted.
Who was your first ever celebrity crush?
Zendaya. My favourite Spider-Man villain will have to be Doc Ock.
Any chance there's a multiverse in which Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and your Spider-Man all meet together?
Of course I'd love to make a movie with those guys. It'd be so cool.
The biggest lottery winners and where they are now. In 2001, David Lee Edwards won a $27 million jackpot. He quickly went on a shopping spree, buying multiple luxury cars, a mansion, a medieval armor and weapons collection, a private jet, and much more. Within just 1 year, he had spent roughly $12 million and contracted hepatitis from repeated drug abuse. After 5 years, all his winnings were gone, his wife left him because he was broke, and he was forced to sell all of his belongings. After just 12 years, he ended up living in a storage unit where he died alone, surrounded by his own feces, owing thousands of dollars. Tom Holland spoiled Spider-Man No Way Home weeks before it came out, and no one noticed. Tom and Zendaya were getting interviewed by BBC Radio 1 when they were talking about Zendaya's stunt where she has to jump off scaffolding. Zendaya was saying how it was exciting and she was so looking forward to do it. And that's when Tom says this.
But that was quite a scary stunt.
Yeah.
What you guys did there.
Yeah. It was fun.
It was really fun.
It's very unnatural.
Well, I wasn't there. It looked really fun.
To like go, okay, well this is something and...
And right after he says that, you can see the moment his soul leaves his body.
I'm fine.
Have you ever wondered what that random sharp pain you get in your chest is and why when you breathe in it hurts more? Well, one of the most common causes of chest pain is something known as precordial catch syndrome. It occurs when nerves in the front of the chest are squeezed or aggravated. It causes pain that usually lasts less than 3 minutes and is not life-threatening and mostly affects children and adolescents. Time travel to the future is actually possible. Here's how. The faster someone is moving, the slower time goes for them relative to someone that is standing still or moving slowly. For example, if you were able to travel at 99.99% the speed of light, that means 1 second on Earth is just under 20 hours for you. That means if you traveled at that speed for 1 day, when you got back to Earth, you would have aged just 1 day. But on Earth, 72,000 days would have passed, or in simpler terms, you would have traveled about 197 years into the future. Crazy coincidences you won't believe actually happened, Part 10. In 1945, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on a business trip, and on the day he was supposed to leave, the US dropped their first atomic bomb. He had been 2 miles from where the bomb was dropped, but miraculously he survived with minor injuries. He returned home to his wife and infant son in Nagasaki, where he went to work just 3 days later. As he was describing his experience to his supervisor, the US dropped their second bomb, this time on Nagasaki. Again, he was just 2 miles from the explosion, but this time he survived without any injuries. He ended up living to the age of 93 and died of stomach cancer in 2010. Videos that seem innocent but have a disturbing backstory. This cheesy dating show from the 1970s shows Rodney Alcala winning a date with the female contestant. Rodney was believed to have killed up to 130 women and appeared on the dating show during his killing spree. Luckily for the female contestant, she didn't go on a date with Rodney as she felt he gave off a creepy vibe. This video shows Chris Watts pleading for the return of his missing pregnant wife and 2 young daughters. At the time of this interview, he had already killed his pregnant wife and 2 daughters and put their bodies in oil tanks. And at the end of the interview, he has asked this question.
Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here.
Worst ways people have died, Part 7. In 2018, Charles Wood Jr. was at a Jack in the Box drive-thru when he realized that he was too far away to take his food from the restaurant worker. So he opened his car door and stretched out to grab his meal, but unfortunately in doing so, he rested his foot on the gas pedal in his car, which was in reverse. This sent him hurtling backwards into a tree, which sandwiched him in between the 2 objects, causing severe injuries which took his life. In 1650, Greek philosopher Heraclitus developed dropsy, which is is the accumulation of fluid under the skin, and he thought that if he buried himself in cow manure, it would draw out some of the fluid. Unfortunately, when he put his theory to the test, the cow manure dried around him and formed a sort of body cast, which made him immobile. And to make matters even worse, that's when a pack of dogs found and devoured him alive. Worst ways people have died, part 5. In 2000, Burger King managers Lisa Goetz and Lori Thomas staged a fake robbery of the restaurant where Lori took the money and Lisa acted as the victim, bound with duct tape and trapped in the walk-in cooler. Unfortunately, police didn't arrive until the next morning, where they found Lisa, who died of hypothermia. According to investigators, Lisa could have easily freed herself from her bindings and escaped the unlocked refrigerator, as she had no signs of forced restraint and the duct tape was loose. In 1998, during a heated marital dispute, a 25-year-old man picked up his 20-year-old wife and threw her off their 8th floor apartment balcony. Somehow the woman became entangled in the power lines below, and in what may have been an effort to save her or maybe finish her off, the man leapt from the balcony aiming for the wires. He missed the power lines completely and plunged to his death, and the woman managed to swing over to a nearby balcony and was saved. Worst ways people have died, part 4. In 2018, Wendy Thomas and her boyfriend Keno Butler were drinking when they got into an argument. Wendy then stabbed Keno in the hand and beat him up with a table leg before plopping herself on top of him and smothering his face with her stomach. With 300 pounds of body blocking his airways, skinny 120-pound Keno didn't stand a chance and he suffocated to death. In 2004, Michael Warner was an alcoholic, but he developed a painful throat condition that prevented him from drinking through his mouth. He soon found that he could use enemas to consume alcohol through the capillaries in his rectum. One night he poured 100 fluid ounces of wine up his rear end. This caused him to pass out, but the alcohol kept absorbing, and sadly he was dead by the morning. Worst ways people have died, part 3. In 2014, Annie Kim Pham left a bar with some friends, and as they were walking down the sidewalk, Annie accidentally photobombed a group of people who were taking pictures. The group taking the photos picked a fight with Annie, and that's when one of them blindsided her, which then turned into a one-sided brawl, leaving Annie unconscious on the sidewalk. Even though she was rushed to the hospital, doctors pronounced her brain dead. Also in 2014, Diane and her husband were at an airport when they told the airport security that Diane had a pacemaker, but she was still ushered through the metal detector. A few minutes later, when they got to their departure gate, Diane suddenly began to feel unwell and then collapsed. Her husband said no ambulance was called, and when doctors arrived, they seemed unsure as to how to help, and sadly she died cradled in her husband's arms. Right now, a single hacker sitting in a basement somewhere could cause a full-out nuclear war, leading to destruction and loss of life on an unprecedented scale. A hack of a nuclear weapon system could trigger a false alarm, making us think that an enemy's nuclear weapons are on their way. And under current US protocols, the president would have just minutes to decide whether or not to launch a retaliatory strike and start a full-blown nuclear war. The US government has found that these systems are vulnerable to cyber attacks, and the US is not prepared to defend against them. And this is not just a theoretical threat. In 2020, Russian military intelligence hacked into a US IT company and hid malware in a software update that was distributed to government agencies like the Department of Homeland Security. The only way for humanity to ensure a future is to work towards the eventual elimination of nuclear weapons entirely. By raising awareness about the dangers of #HackedNukes, we can help to build public pressure on elected officials to take action and protect us all from this grave threat. YouTubers who have spent time in jail or prison. In 2017, a popular Spanish YouTuber with over 1 million subscribers known as Reset took the filling out of an Oreo cookie and replaced it with toothpaste. He then gave the cookie to a homeless man, claiming that it would help clean his teeth. However, the online community was outraged by the prank, and a petition was created to have Reset's channel deleted, which gained over 125,000 signatures. Things only got worse for Reset when the homeless man's daughter saw the backlash on the internet and decided to take legal action against the YouTuber. In court, Judge Rosa Aragones found him guilty of violating the homeless man's moral integrity and sentenced him to 15 months in prison. Here were 3 of the most disturbing communities on Reddit. Just a quick heads up, if you have a sensitive stomach, don't go searching these subreddits. Let's start off with some mild stuff, shall we? The Reddit community r/human toilets is not just a place for pictures and videos of people using others as toilets, but also a meeting place for people who want to be used for those types of bodily functions. We live in 2022, and while some kinks are starting to be widely accepted, this shouldn't be one of them. The subreddit r/beating women is a dedicated community full of photos and videos of women being assaulted, but also discussions on how to beat women and inflict the most pain. And the last one, and the one I do not recommend visiting, is eye bleach. A lot of people make the mistake between eye iBleach with an A, which is a subreddit for cute animals, and iBleach without the A, which is just pure gore, videos and images of cruelty, and much more. You'll definitely need to wash your eyes with bleach after seeing that. If these animal moments weren't recorded, no one would believe it. Part 2. On New Year's Eve in 2012, the people in Norway were confused when thousands of dead fish washed up on a beach. There were so many fish that they weighed an estimated 20 tons. But here's where things get crazy. Before anyone could even count the fish, let alone clean them up, the fish disappeared. No one's sure how these fish all washed up and then disappeared within a few hours. The fish clearly weren't alive as they were no longer in the water. So how on earth did they simply vanish? It makes no sense. According to the World Health Organization, it has recently been reported that an Ebola outbreak has been declared in Uganda. Health officials have found over a dozen cases of the infection, and already over 30 deaths have been attributed to the outbreak. This virus can spread through bodily fluids, and it can take several days for symptoms to appear, time in which the person is contagious. The disease causes both internal and external bleeding and is more often than not fatal. Unfortunately, there is no approved Ebola vaccine yet. This particular outbreak is caused by the Sudan virus, which has a mortality rate ranging anywhere from 20 to 90%. Because there is no vaccine available for this particular strain, authorities are working relentlessly to find the source of the outbreak, but also to isolate those who are currently infected, all in the hopes of containing this outbreak before it spreads more widely. This is probably the most messed up thing I've ever heard. In 2000, during the Sydney Paralympics, the Spanish learning disabled basketball team beat Russia in their final match to win gold. But after the games closed, a member of the team, Carlos Ribagorda, confessed something outrageous to the press. The team was supposed to be made up exclusively of players with an IQ of less than 70, but 10 of their 12 players were actually mentally competent athletes with much higher IQs than the maximum. Apparently, they had all signed up as part of a wider scheme to boost their country's chances of winning. They were even provided with fake medical certificates to help them feign disabilities. Worst of all, for 2 years leading up to the Paralympics, they had trained around the world beating disabled athletes. Shockingly, the mastermind behind the scheme was the president of the Spanish Federation of Sports for the Intellectually Disabled, but he was fined just 5,400 euros after admitting to charges of fraud and embezzlement. While watching the new mind-bending sci-fi show The Peripheral, it got me thinking, if you could see your future and use that information to make changes to your life in the present, would you want to? That's exactly what takes place in this show, where it is the year 2032 and Flynn gets the chance to beta test a new super advanced VR game. Through this simulation, Flynn can transport her consciousness into an AI avatar from an alternate future set in London in 2099, while her physical being remains in the past. The show introduces the concept of future bending, which is when you see what is going to happen in the future and use that information to make changes in your present, thus changing your future. So is this type of future bending actually possible? VR has come a long way over the last few years, allowing us to step into places we could only imagine. Who knows, that along with the known fact that space-time can be bent could one day allow us to experience this type of reality, hopefully sooner rather than later. To see future bending in action, tune into Prime Video to watch The Peripheral now. If these animal moments weren't recorded, no one would believe it. On New Year's Eve in 2011, the people in Arkansas, USA were shocked when it began to rain dead ravens. That's right, over 5,000 dead raven birds fell from the sky. This phenomenon remains unexplained to this day. No one is sure how 5,000 birds flying in the sky can suddenly pass away. Scientists found that they passed away from internal trauma, but there were no signs of damage on their outer bodies. There was also no sign that these birds were sick in any way. In 2019, this man tricked the world into believing he was Ed Sheeran and got front row seats to the sold-out KSI vs Logan Paul fight. Ty Jones is just a regular guy from Manchester, England who happens to look a lot like Ed Sheeran. YouTuber Josh Peters flew him out to LA to attempt to pull off one of the most elaborate pranks of all time. Without any problems, Ty and Josh infiltrated the stadium, took red carpet photos, got interviewed, and tricked a whole VIP room full of famous YouTubers. Because of all the commotion, security had Ty moved to the elite VIP seats, sitting right by Justin Bieber and Rick Ross. And to end the night, they were even able to finesse their way into some of the most exclusive clubs in LA. Crazy before and after green screen effects in movies, Part 9. In Guardians of the Galaxy, Rocket and Groot are actually two guys in bodysuits that move around and fully act out all the scenes that include the characters. This leads to funny moments on set, like this scene which is actually Drax just petting a guy in a bodysuit. In The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, Benedict Cumberbatch played the fiery dragon Smaug. You can see him rolling and moving around as he's wearing a motion capture suit to act out the movements of the scary dragon. But in I Am Legend, when Will Smith gets attacked by a zombie dog, it's actually just a guy in a bodysuit holding a dog puppet for where the dog's mouth would be. Crazy things that Tesla drivers were caught doing while in autopilot. 19-year-old Taylor Jackson and her boyfriend recorded themselves doing the nasty as their Tesla drove itself on the highway. They posted the video online where it got over 20 million views and even got the attention of Tesla's CEO Elon Musk. He tweeted, "Turns out there's more ways to use autopilot than we imagined. Should've seen it coming." Most expensive mistakes in history, part 3. In 1998, Yahoo was given the chance to buy Google for $1 million, but Yahoo said no. In 2002, Yahoo realized their mistake and tried to buy Google for $1 billion, but Google counteroffered at $3 billion, and once again, Yahoo said no. In 2006, Yahoo tried to buy Facebook for $1 billion, but Facebook wanted $1.1 billion, and Yahoo wouldn't increase their offer. By 2008, Yahoo was starting to fail, so Microsoft offered $44.6 billion to buy and save them from going out of business, but Yahoo said no. And by 2016, Yahoo was losing over $4 billion a year and were forced to sell the whole company to Verizon for only $4.6 billion. To put that into perspective, at that time, Google was worth $500 billion and Facebook was worth $330 billion. This video of Maxwell Berry screaming while duct taped to an airplane seat went viral in August of 2021. He was on a flight from Philadelphia to Miami when he groped the breasts and backsides of 2 female flight attendants. He was also recorded punching a male flight attendant. To keep Berry from attacking or groping anyone else, flight attendants used seatbelt extenders and tape to keep him seated and his mouth temporarily shut. Berry pled guilty to 3 counts of assault and was just sentenced to 60 days in jail and 1 year of supervised release. Here are some photos taken right before disaster. While traveling in Peru, Jared Michael stopped by some railroad tracks to take a selfie while a train passed, but it seems that Jared was a bit too close to the tracks, as when the train reached him, the conductor's foot gave him a pretty solid kick to the head. Thankfully, Jared ended up being okay. While Filipino politician Ronaldo Dagza was taking this photo of his family, he managed to also capture to the left the assassin that would end up murdering him right after the photo was taken. 3-year-old William Tyrell's mom was watching him and a couple of his siblings play outside, when she quickly stepped back inside to get her phone. But when she came back outside, he was gone and has never been found ever since.
3, 2, 1.
You could have the ability to do this. About 8% of people can. This skill is called voluntary nystagmus, where your eyes move side to side so fast it looks like they're vibrating. If you want to find out how to do this, listen carefully. First, you need to hold your finger about a foot in front of you. Now bring your finger closer until it's almost blurry. At that point, shift your focus between your finger and the background behind it really fast. This will cause your eyes to shake. Let me know if it worked for you. When this father took a funny photo of his daughter, he had no idea it would end up saving her life. As he took a photo of his daughter on her first bath, he found her expression funny and posted the photo online. A lot of people made funny remarks, but there was one comment from a children's doctor that got the father's full attention. "Are her eyes a little yellow? It looks like it to me. It's probably nothing, but it could be a symptom for neonatal jaundice. If her skin and eyes look a little yellow, then maybe you should get it checked out." The dad took this comment to heart and took his daughter immediately to the doctor. The paranoid comment of the doctor was confirmed. His newborn had jaundice and the doctor probably saved her life with that one frightening comment. Here are some photos taken right before disaster. Maria de Hoya sadly passed away from tuberculosis at only 21 years old. During her illness, however, her doctor, Carl Tanzler, fell in love with her. And after she died, he kept her mummified body for 7 years until he was eventually caught and imprisoned. And this is her body when she was discovered. In Ukraine, a woman once got lost in the catacombs under the city after having a New Year's Eve party down there with some friends. She was never found until this group of teenagers stumbled across her body right here. This is the last photo ever taken of Uruguayan Flight 571 right before it crashed into the Andes Mountains. Those that survived the crash were forced to cannibalize the dead to survive until they were rescued 72 days later. This security camera video captures the terrifying moments about 75 recruits jogging in formation were struck by a Honda going the wrong way. The crash injured 25 recruits with injuries ranging from head trauma to loss of limbs. 5 are in critical condition, 1 even on a ventilator. It happened just yards away from a fire station, so help came quickly, but it was still chaotic. The driver still hasn't been identified. All we know is that he is 22 years old and that he passed a field sobriety test, but that doesn't completely rule out drugs. The official cause of the crash is still unknown, and unbelievably, Sheriff Villanueva believes it was a horrific accident, even though recruits say that they heard the driver accelerate around 30 to 40 miles per hour moments before the crash. Do you think it was an accident? Where did the myths of vampires actually come from? Like many myths, it is based partly in fact. Back in the 1700s, a blood disorder called porphyria became prevalent among the people of Eastern Europe. Porphyria is an inherited blood disorder that causes many vampire-like side effects, like the following. Extreme sensitivity to sunlight, which led to facial disfigurement that caused the gums to recede, exposing the teeth, which then look like fangs. Next, blood drinking. Because the urine of people with porphyria is dark red, folklore surmised that they were drinking blood. In fact, some physicians had recommended that these patients drink animal blood to compensate for the defect in their red blood cells. Next, fear of the crucifix. During the Spanish Inquisition, 600 vampires were reportedly burned at the stake. Some of these accused vampires were innocent sufferers of porphyria. So porphyria patients had good reason to fear the Christian faith and Christian symbols. So vampires didn't exist in our world, but where vampires do exist is in the supernatural fantasy world of Myths of Moonrise. Myths of Moonrise is a match 3 puzzle and simulation game that includes vampires, werewolves, mages, and demons, where players can obtain heroes, establish their own territory of power, and have PvP confrontations. Click here on my profile to get it. This man can walk faster than most people can run, and when I show you the video of how fast he is, you will be shocked. This is Richard, a professional competitive race walker. He can walk 1 mile in 6 minutes and 39 seconds. That means his walking speed is over 9 miles per hour, which is over 1 mile per hour faster than most people run. For competitive walking to be considered walking and not running, your legs must remain straight and you must have 1 foot on the ground at all times. Before I show you the video of how fast he can walk, you may not be able to walk as fast as Richard does, but what you can do is get paid to literally just walk. I found an app that pays you for every step you take, and you're already walking 10,000 steps a day, so you may as well get paid. Click here on my profile if you want to get paid too. Okay, here's the video.